Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a great weekend. It's Fred Staub and Les Jackson. We are here to tell you all about what's going on in the automotive industry. Les, we're going to talk about this vehicle, which is getting underway, the Lyric from Cadillac. They're 80% calibrated and developed. So you can see that vehicle's almost production ready. We're going to talk about that. And then
Looks close.
the C9 Corvette. Yes, Chevy is talking to people about the C9 Corvette. We'll talk about that. Also, we'll talk about how BMW is going to celebrate 50 years of the M brand, which is pretty cool. Who knew there were 50 years of M branded cars, huh?
I would have guessed maybe 25 or 30.
Yeah. Well, apparently there's 50 years worth, and
Hmm.
we'll talk about that and more when we come back on Cruise Control. If you have a question or something you'd like us to cover, don't forget, put it in the comments section, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. We will be right back.
This is Cruise Control.
Your on-air automotive magazine with co-hosts Fred Staub and Les Jackson. Everything you need to know about new and used cars. Industry news. We'll fix or repair your car on the air. Fasten your seatbelts and let us take the wheel. Now, your ride is about to begin because you're on Cruise Control.
Cruise Control. Cruise Control.
And welcome everybody to Cruise Control, your on-air automotive magazine. And it is once again us. I'm Les Jackson. The other us is Fred Staub. And as usual, we are live here in your, well, wherever you're sitting, in your living rooms, dining rooms, band caves, your car, in front of your computer. And once again, as usual, we've got a lot of stuff about the auto industry. It just doesn't slow down.
No, it sure doesn't, Les. There's a lot going on, and we're going to start out with a vehicle from Cadillac getting a lot closer to production, and that is none other than the highly touted electric crossover, the Lyric, right?
Yep, I'm looking forward to that. I think it's going to be a big deal, but we're just not going to stop there. We are going to talk about what a lot of people always ask us, which is what are the most reliable and what are the least reliable vehicles out there. And of course, the number one authority on that is Consumer Reports. We're going to see their latest study.
Yeah, that's always great information if you're heading out to buy a vehicle or getting prepped to buy a vehicle. And that's what you got to do. You got to get ready and be prepped because there's a lot going on right now. We'll get you up to date. Then we're going to talk tech. It seems like this is a little counterintuitive. Why does Mercedes think it's sometimes a great idea to deflate your tires?
Well, we know on sand.
Well, that's true.
Idea.
That's true. At the drag strip, it's a good idea to get more traction.
But we'll be more precise about it. And how will BMW celebrate its 50th anniversary of the M division? Both of us were talking earlier. we didn't realize the M's have been around for 50 years. I remember the TII versions. Back in the 70s and 80s. I don't remember the M's.
Yeah. Well, we will talk about that, Les Jackson, and how they're going to celebrate. And as you know, BMW always has a big party, so they will have something incredible coming up. Got a lot to get to, too, about Audi, news about Audi and Ford and Rivian and Jeep recalls, and a whole lot more. So you got to stay tuned to Cruise Control, your on-air automotive magazine. Don't forget to check us out at cruisecontrolradio.com, where you can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. It's all there, cruisecontrolradio.com. Yes, when we come back, we're going to tell you about what will be a huge vehicle for the folks over at Cadillac, the first fully electric vehicle in their lineup. That brand is going to go completely electric, so this is just the start. We will talk about that when we come back on Cruise Control, your on-air automotive magazine. Stay tuned.
Come on.
Cruise Control.
And welcome back to Cruise Control, your on-air automotive magazine. Fred Staub and Les Jackson here with you for a action-packed hour of automotive entertainment and information. Have I got that right, Les?
I think the one thing you missed is you didn't work in the word vroom.
All right. Well, vroom. There, yeah, I'll have to work on that for
I'll
the
make
next thing.
sound effects.
Well, let's get started this hour. And, you and I always talk about photos where we see these taped up or camouflaged vehicles driving around. You wonder, what are the engineers doing when they're driving these prototypes or very early production vehicles around? And what they're doing is a validation drive. We have many engineers talk about that, and they basically are validating how the vehicle reacts in real world, whether it's cold weather, whether it's hot weather, whether it's traffic. And the Cadillac engineers announced this week that the Lyric, which is going to be their plug-in, it is plug-in. It's a fully electric crossover that will be very luxurious, very unique, have many unique touches with lighting and things like that. It is undergoing 80%. It's 80% there as far as the validation drive, and it is ahead of the Q1 2022 production start. So they are coming along quite nicely with the vehicle. It is the first vehicle, all-electric vehicle, that will come from Cadillac. Of course, Cadillac is going to switch over to full electric. Their full lineup will be electric. This is going to be built in the spring of 2022 in GM's Spring Hill, Tennessee assembly facility. You know what brand used to be there, built there, right, Les?
Yep.
None other than Saturn.
Oh, yes. What a difference.
What a difference. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. And the debut edition will be available with advanced technologies and steering performance, including a 12-module, 100.4 kilowatt-hour battery pack, and a rear-wheel drive Ultium pack. It's estimated 340 horsepower and 440 nanometers of torque, with an estimated range of about 300 miles in a full charge. Compares very well to the Mustang Mach-E that I had a week or so ago that I gave a review on. That had 346 horsepower, and it had about a 270-mile range, but it was all-wheel drive. I'm not sure if this one will be all-wheel drive. I'm sure they'll offer it. The other thing, high-speed DC fast charging. Customers can add up to 76 miles of range in about 10 minutes when charging at home. So that is pretty cool, isn't it?
It is. Now, some people hearing this may think, now, wait a minute. They're only 80% there, and they're going to be producing this in a few months. That means 20% of it doesn't work. No, that's not what it means. When they're 80% there, they're looking for all just the little nuances of things. Like, well, we need to put more spring pressure on this hood latch. We need to
you're going over a railroad track and there's a weird rattle. So they'll drive over that railroad track all day long until they figure out what's rattling.
That's right. The exhaust rattles or something.
Not on this.
These are all the little things. Well, wait, yes, there would. If there's an exhaust rattle, that's a major problem.
You can just take that off on an electric vehicle. Yeah. You can just remove that. Problem solved.
But all these things just, actually, we're not very satisfied with this type of tire. We're going to put a new specification for a different kind of tire. Things like that.
Yeah. As they say, fine-tuning the touch points. So really, this is where you go back with a fine-tooth comb. You look at anything that's not lining up, that's rattling, that's hard to use, you know, a latch on a center console, anything like that. They're looking how this works in the real world. They're doing cold weather testing, hot weather testing. It's all there, and that's what they do. And some of this can't be simulated. It has to be actually physically performed, right?
Well, that's right. They've already done hundreds and hundreds of thousands of miles of beta testing, but now these are the pre-production versions. They make a few of, and they send them out and they thrash them. Let's figure out what might not hold up. Things as simple as the paint process.
Yep. Well, we'll talk more about that when we come back on Cruise Control, your on-air automotive magazine. Check us out at cruisecontrolradio.com.
Mm-hmm.
Cruise Control.
Hey, welcome back to Cruise Control. Les and Fred here. We're rolling through the stories. We were just talking about the Cadillac Lyric. Neither of us can wait to drive it.
It's gonna be great.
We're just, it's going to be interesting. But getting back to another subject we brought up, and that is psychopaths.
No, we're going to do that in the second hour.
No, I'm playing with that. In fact, again, we get emails all the time from people, and when we I give a lot of speeches, and it's always, what's the best car, reliability wise? What's the worst?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it depends on the year.
Yeah.
But people at Consumer Reports chart this every year and put out lists that some automakers don't like.
No.
Uh, but these are engineering studies that's as close to real time data as you can get. It's not subjective.
No, that's right. And what we're talking about is Consumer Reports' most and least reliable
Right.
report. And let's kind of look at it. They call it its annual reliability report. And they score it on a score of 100. The average number is usually between 41 and 60. Average reliability for Asian brands is 62, followed by European manufacturers with 44, and domestic brands on 18 points. That's the average. So, what are the most reliable vehicles? Top 10 list, scoring a very robust 76 out of 100 is Lexus. Follow closely, very closely, in their 6, Mazda at 75, Toyota at 71.
Right. Well, Toyota and Lexus are the same company.
Yep. And what do you have?
Well, Infiniti, 69, which is,
Nice
nothing
score
to sneeze at.
Mm-hmm.
Buick, which has always done pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
They're at 66, as is Honda.
That's pretty good.
And, everybody knows a Honda, you just drive it forever.
Mm-hmm.
Subaru, also 66.
Yeah.
And yet Acura, which is not, which is a division of Honda, they're at 64. Now, why do you suppose they're not quite as reliable as a Honda?
I don't know. It's pretty close. It's
close.
Yeah, Nissan 63. Nissan builds a lot of good cars. Interesting. Mini at 60. Good score. They've always had some issues, though, as far as
they've come up.
Yeah, they have. They have improved. And then there was insufficient data for Alfa Romeo, Dodge, Fiat, Jaguar, Land Rover, Maserati, Mitsubishi, and Polestar. Insufficient data. Okay, so now to the other side of the equation.
And I just want to say before you start that you and I have been pioneers in calling attention to one of these.
Matter of fact, we have a whole series of stories about it.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. All right. So let's look at the least reliable brands. Volkswagen coming in at 31. That's 31 out of 100.
Surprises me.
Yeah.
Surprises me.
Average, once again, on the Consumer Reports study is roughly between 41 and 60. So Volkswagen scoring 31. Genesis 30, also a surprise, wouldn't you say?
Big surprise.
Jeep 26. We're going to talk about a Jeep recall. I don't think it's really been factored into this, but
with Jeep though, they're driven hard, and I think that's going to affect how reliable they're perceived to be.
Okay. The next one, Tesla 25.
I told you so.
And sadly, in the bottom is Lincoln at 18.
Yeah. I don't understand that.
I have a Lincoln Nautilus right now. We'll have an at-the-wheel review next week. But I think it's a pretty cool vehicle, actually. Pretty nice vehicle. Rides nice, quiet. But that's just some of the numbers from the Consumer Reports annual reliability report. Now, this is interesting, too. When it comes to body styles, what models did the best, if you want to crunch the numbers? So sedans had a reliability score of 57 overall. SUVs were second with 50 points, and pickups and vans scored 43. So overall, looking at those numbers,
Yeah.
and then when it comes to battery, electrics, and hybrids, hybrids and plug-ins are more reliable than EVs. But that's, I think, because they've been around for a longer time, right?
Yeah, that's right. And by the way, if a lot of people are opting for used vehicles these days, just because a bunch of these brands scored high doesn't mean you should assume that one that's 3 or 4 or 5 years old is equally high. You should go back to Consumer Reports of that particular year that you're looking at and see how that model you're interested in did.
Yeah, because let's remember, things have been changing pretty dramatically in the automotive world, and
Yeah.
there's just a lot changing that is going to be it was really going to change from year to year, model year. And then we have some other things, the most reliable vehicles. So the most reliable vehicles, the most reliable car on sale in 2022 is the Lexus GX with 100 points.
Yep.
Perfect score, Les Jackson. And
you can't do better than 100 points.
No. And then second place went to the Kia Niro Electric with 95 points for a full electric. In third place was the Toyota Prius Prime with 93 points, followed by the standard Prius with 91 points. And you might be saying, well, where does the U.S. come in? Well, it makes the top 5 with the 2022 Cadillac XT5 crossover, 89 points. Not a bad score for that.
Which is excellent.
Yeah. The least reliable car with just 5 points, Les Jackson.
Repeat that.
The least
5 points.
5 points out of 100.
Out of 100.
Where 41 is a good score. Yep. So, you ready for it? It's the Mercedes GLE.
Honestly, I'm not surprised by that. I find Mercedes, by and large, have just endlessly irritating defects that people are constantly having to go back to the shop for. But they're under warranty, but they just
also
seem to have a lot.
This is kind of a surprise. Ford Explorer, 8 points.
That's, again, that Explorer's been around a long time.
Yeah, been improved. Ford Mustang, 9 points.
Not great.
Silverado, Chevy Silverado 1500, 11 points.
That's for a pickup truck, for a an industry standard kind of pickup truck. That's pretty bad.
And then the next was Corvette with 13 points.
Corvette's never done well with Consumer Reports. They were always the least reliable, even back in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And it's mainly because they were cars that get beat up.
Yeah. Well, the ones that did well for America above average, Buick Envision, Chevy Trailblazer, Chrysler 300, Mach-E, and Ranger. We'll be right back with Cruise Control.
Cruise Control.
And welcome back to Cruise Control, your on-air automotive magazine. I'm Fred Staub. He is Les Jackson. We are taking you on a ride around the automotive industry, new models. We went through some of the least reliable and most reliable cars from Consumer Reports. That was kind of a little surprise.
We've spoiled some people's day.
Yeah, I mean, just because it did poorly on the list, that's just one of your factors. If you really like the vehicle, research it more.
Not our fault.
Yeah. But it's just good information to have. And
it is.
The other point is, if you're going to buy a vehicle, and you were talking about buying older vehicles, let's say you want to buy something 2 or 3 years old, there are forums for virtually every vehicle nowadays.
Yep.
And if you have a problem, or if you haven't bought the vehicle yet and you're thinking, well, what problems might I have? That's the place to go. For instance, I have my Pontiac Vibe I still drive. If I get a problem, there's a problem where when you deselected recirc, you would get this clicking sound in the I found it right away, what the part was, what the part number was, and how to replace it. So it's good information, and you can find out what are people having problems with. You just kind of read through the forums and say, oh, well, there's a problem with the windshield wipers, or there's a problem with the seat adjuster. You find this all out ahead of time.
That's true.
And then you see what's going on. Hey, do you want to talk a little tech? It's always fun to talk tech.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Why would you ever want to, Les, take the air out of your tires?
Well, in certain situations, such as sand, if you take the air out of the tires, it spreads the load out.
Okay.
And you get actually more traction than you would with proper air pressure.
Well, too, at the drag strip, they lower tire pressure down to 10 pounds in the rear, so the tires will grip. So kind of the same thing, right?
Right. In deep snow, same thing.
Yeah. Well,
that's why Hummers, the military Hummer, you could deflate or inflate your tires on the run.
That's right. You didn't even have to get out, because maybe you couldn't get out in the middle of a battle or a biological attack or something like that. Yeah. Well, Car Buzz had an interesting article, carbuzz.com. Always interesting stuff going on there. They discovered, and they do this all the time, they discover these patents. They must have their man in the patent office. And they discovered a patent filed by Daimler AG, who, of course, own Mercedes. And it is a user-operated fallback braking device coupled with a valve that lowers tire pressure in cases of emergency braking. Tires will go flat to help slow the car down if the braking system fails.
Well, of course. I mean, the amount of friction that a low-pressure tire or no-pressure tire has is enormous. But how do you reinflate it?
I don't know. The system consists of a central control unit, an air pressure reduction valve, and the two systems activate when the central brake unit fails or has a fault. So this is an all or nothing braking system, I guess, in case you really are failing, right? It was designed
that's true.
with electric vehicles and hybrids in mind, but can be used on traditional internal combustion cars.
This is much more sophisticated system than the cruise control van, which is a cinder block on a piece of rope.
Still effective, but
well, it does work.
Yes. But it's interesting that they would do this as a total failback system. It's something they're looking into. A bigger contact patch on the road with less air.
That's right.
So we'll have to see if we see this on any vehicles.
But if you want to do this yourself, that's fine. I mean, obviously, you don't want to lower it by more than 5 or 6 pounds, but bear in mind that if you run lower pressure, you're going to get worse gas mileage.
You'll wear out your tires too, won't you?
And you'll wear out the tires. Yes.
Yeah.
The outer.
What's
edges.
what's the number for fuel economy too if you underinflate your tires?
Well, for every 5 pounds lower, or for every 1 pound lower, you're losing as much as 2 miles per gallon.
Yeah. But the system is interesting for all-out braking. You wonder if they would use that on airplanes even, if if they need extreme braking.
Well, I don't think they would need to do that on commercial airliners because, of course, you have thrust reverse.
And all your spoilers and things like that to knock
lighter
down the
planes, maybe.
Yeah. Interesting. That's from carbuzz.com. They research these patents that are filed. And I think we have another one of them coming up a little bit later on Cruise Control. That's the show you're listening to. I'm Fred Staub. He is Les Jackson, and we are here every week to keep you up to date on new vehicles, buying tips, new technology, and we're just loving car culture. Now, part of car culture is the BMW M brand, and they are celebrating, they're getting ready to celebrate 50 years of existence in 2022. And they're doing it with a new logo, Les. It will be BMW logo with shifted semicircles in blue, violet, and red. That was first used in 1973 on BMWs, and it's making a comeback. That is a historic motorsport emblem. That's one of the ways they're going to celebrate. You had said they will celebrate with a party where everything on the menu, there you go, it begins with M.
Yes. Would be an M.
Foods with M in their name.
That's right.
But I'm sure there will be special editions. Of course, this logo will be there, and people will want to snap up the 50-year vehicles that hit that mark, don't you think?
Well, while we're having a nice Manhattan, I still want to know, what were the models 50 years ago? Because I am ignorant of the M models back then.
Yeah.
Well, again, there were
we'll research that.
The TII versions of 2002. Those were the performance models. I don't know what the M models were.
Maybe some of them didn't come to the U.S. That could be the problem.
Maybe so.
I mean, this is 50 years of the M brand, but it doesn't necessarily mean it came to the U.S. And, of course, right now, the lineup includes the M3, M4, X3M, and more. And with a production date of March 2022, that's when these new logos are going to come in. They're going to be on the vehicle's front and rear wheel hubs, and of course on the front of the vehicle. And it will be optionally available on BMW M performance models like the M340i, the M440i, the X3 M40i, which I have to say is one of my favorite M vehicles. It was a lot of fun to drive that. I'm sure there will be more colors. They're talking about Dakar yellow, fire orange, Daytona violet, Mikado blue, which kind of looks a little bit like Grabber blue, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Imola red, frozen Marina Bay blue. I'm not sure what the lime green model is.
That's
I'm not sure. I like the blue though. That blue is always.
That's definitely a color.
Yeah. The other thing is, too, pretty soon there'll be an the first all-electric M model, which will be coming to the U.S. So the M brand will continue, even though the internal combustion engine might not necessarily be what you find under the hood. So 50 years of M. We'll have to get some more history of that. Maybe we'll get someone on from BMW to
I'm
talk
going to look
about
that up. You know, I just I'm at a loss for the M. The first M I remember was in kind of the late 80s.
All right. Well, maybe Les will do some Googlifying during the break, and when we come back,
Fine idea.
we have plenty more to go on cruise control, so stay tuned. We will be right back.
Cruise Control.
And welcome back to Cruise Control. It's still your on-air automotive magazine. And as promised before the break, I Googlified the which is a new word, which Fred now owns.
Yeah.
The M BMW series sold in the U.S. and they didn't start selling those until '78 here, and they were basically M versions of the 5 and 6 series sedans.
Okay.
They weren't their own model, and that kind of continued through the '80s when they started selling the M1 and the M3 and things like that. So the reason we didn't recognize those models is because they were just sort of trim engine versions of existing models back then.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about something completely different. And this is a story you and I have been talking about. It's kind of a sad story because, I think GM is getting a raw deal here. But let's talk about the Chevy Bolt. You and I like this. Is a very easy way to get into electric cars. It's pleasant to drive. It's a nice size. It's very usable. And, of course, the problem has been that over 140,000 Bolts will need new batteries. No fault of GM. It is LG that built these batteries, and they would catch fire. And several of these vehicles have caught fire. And the neat thing about the Bolt, you could get the Super Cruise option. You can get all kinds of cool options in it, and it's got great range, 250 miles. It's available in this sort of SUV version they brought out, or a little bit more room in the back for storage. But it was halted. Production of the Bolt EV and EUV, that's the extended one, for lack of a better term, was halted in August because GM is focusing on replacing the battery packs, the faulty battery packs, in 140,000 of these vehicles. It's a $1.9 billion cost. It will be covered by LG Chem. The thing is, Les, it's a bad deal for GM because people will blame GM and say, the Bolt's no good. I don't want that.
Well, that's right. And people will, first, they won't be able to buy one because they've shut production down. Mm-hmm. Secondly, they'll say, well, see, it's such a bad car that they stopped producing it because people don't.
Right, they get the wrong story. Yeah.
And this is just, it's sad. That reminds me, and it's not the same thing in any way, but it reminds me of how a perfectly good car loses everything, just loses out, or a brand loses out. And that reminds me, and I'm thinking about in the 80s when 60 Minutes did a big thing about unintended acceleration, and it was the Audi.
Yeah.
And it was completely wrong, absolutely incorrect. I knew it. I actually tried to reach the Department of Transportation, which I did at the time, and I said, "This is wrong. CBS is wrong." And they said, "Yeah, we know. It's just it's target fixation." But 60 Minutes never ever apologized for that, and Audi lost business for 15 years.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I hope the same thing doesn't happen with GM and electric vehicles, and I hope the Bolt comes back. I think it's a great little vehicle. As I say, a great way to dip your toe into electric vehicles. It's just not available now because they're doing the right thing. They're focusing on getting these battery packs changed, but I don't know how extensive the work is to get them changed, but I'm feeling it might be kind of extensive, Well,
it seems to me it would be the equivalent almost of an engine change in a similar size car. And imagine having your dealers do 140,000 of those.
Yes. Yeah.
It's scary.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Shame.
Let's
Just a real shame.
let's talk about another vehicle, and that is the Jeep. This is a big recall for Jeep. They're recalling 100,000 vehicles for a serious safety issue, including the Grand Cherokee L, Wagoneer, and Grand Wagoneer models, due to malfunctioning software that can disable passenger airbags. NHTSA posted the recall on its website in November, and this follows the news that the 2021 Jeep Grand Cherokee L would also be recalled for an issue with its high beam lights that can affect about slightly over 7,000 of these vehicles. What do you think about that, Les? That's they have had a recall-free period for a long time. The last one was March of 2019 for failed emission tests, and then there was one in 2018 for a braking system.
Yeah, this might have to do with Consumer Reports' low score for Jeep.
Yeah, it's interesting. It is interesting.
Because, these are serious issues. And when it involves 100,000 of them.
I don't know if this was, I don't know when their study, Consumer Reports study, was done and what, models it took into account and if this was part of their data. But certainly, if you have one of these vehicles, a Grand Cherokee L, Wagoneer, a Grand Wagoneer, then you're probably going to get a recall, and they will.
Yep.
It's something you definitely need to get fixed up because it is a big issue, isn't it?
And don't avoid the recalls. Just go get it done.
Yeah.
It's not a trick to get you in to sell you more service. They make plenty of money, the dealer, on the recall. So don't not do it.
Yeah, and it's completely covered by warranty, so you should do it for sure. There's a little bit of technology. Well, we talked a little bit about BMW this hour, and this also, I believe, comes from CarBuzz. They must have someone there just looking constantly. Someone on the inside, in the patent office. But BMW is looking at a frameless window. Now, let me see if I can explain this. So, we've all seen frameless windows. They were popular in the 60s and 70s. Postless cars, you put the windows down, it's a big open space, right? The window goes down in there. And certain cars today still have frameless windows, but what they're talking about here, I think the best way to describe it is it's like an airplane door. You know how the door comes in and then it kind of pushes out a little bit? Well, what they're talking about here with these BMW windows is it would come up from inside the door, and then the glass would kind of push out, so it would be flush with the exterior of the car. It's very kind of like an aircraft piece, and it would have to come up on the tracks and then slide out some way. That's what they're talking about, perfectly flush, frameless windows. And I think this would make the size of cars look quite slick, don't you think?
It would. This cannot be inexpensive to do.
And it could break and go,
could break.
go horribly wrong, couldn't it?
Well, especially in high wind conditions outside, when the air pressure exceeds the inside air pressure, it could blow the window in.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see how they use this. If they use it, could just be an interesting thing that BMW is
just because they have a patent.
Yeah. Hey, we appreciate you listening to Cruise Control. Don't forget, check us out at cruisecontrolradio.com. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. Check out YouTube. I'm Fred Staub.
I'm Les Jackson.
We'll see you down the road.
Bye.